Welcome to the HCI family of podcasts. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We share our own original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. Join us for practitioner-oriented content around all things leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with the HCI family of podcasts. David Berkal and Cathy Wassenaar, welcome to the conversation today.
Thanks, John.
It's a real pleasure to have you both. David, you're joining us from Toronto. Cathy, I apologize. You told me, but I forget. Where are you joining us from?
Southwest Florida.
Southwest Florida. Wonderful. And I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. So we're kind of all over the place today, scattered across the northern hemisphere here in North America. Today, we're going to have a fun opportunity to chat about the impact of acquisitions on company culture. You know, as both a consultant and a professor, you know, in the HR and org leadership space, you know, these are the types of things I love to talk to my students about. I love to talk with organizational leaders about, because a lot of times, you know, leaders don't think about the culture aspect of these types of decisions. You know, they're thinking about the bottom line. They're thinking about, you know, the dollars and cents, which is important, right? Like, I mean, obviously that's an important part of thinking about acquisitions, but like, what are the long-term impacts in terms of culture? What are the long-term impacts in terms of the people that are left behind in the wake of these acquisitions, these mergers, and such? And so these are the types of things we're going to explore together today. And I think, given both of your backgrounds and expertise, I think it'll just be a really fascinating conversation. As we get started, I wanted to share bios with the audience. Cathy Wassenaar is CEO of NCT CaseWorks Software, and she'll share more about her background here in just a moment. And David Berkal is the CEO of Banyan Software, and he's an entrepreneur with experience in operations, M&A, strategy, sales, and marketing. Now, I'm going to pause and give both of you a chance to share a little bit more about your backgrounds. Cathy, I'll invite you to go first. David, next. Anything else you would like to share about your background, personal context before we dive on into the conversation?
Sure. My background with NCT really started my journey about 15 years ago. I was invited by the founder of the company to be involved in the early startup stages. Over the course of the 15 years, we did grow the business, and it was just a fun ride being number two. And my transition happened actually as part of our transition and acquisition by Banyan. Our founder was also the creator of CaseWorks Software. And so he really had the technical mind. And Banyan's idea was, you know, we should have you focus completely on the software, soar where you're gifted. And we would recommend moving Cathy into the role of CEO. So that transaction happened to me, or transition, right at the point of acquisition. So a little over 3 years ago.
Yeah, wonderful. Excellent. David.
Well, pleasure to be here. And as you mentioned, I'm the CEO and founder here at Banyan Software, and started the company 8 years ago now. And our model is Banyan acquires software companies all over the world that have dominant positions in niche markets. So Cathy's business, NCT CaseWorks, was one of them, a phenomenal business, and then can continue to grow since. And our model is a pretty interesting one. We've got this permanent home philosophy where we want to help our companies grow for life, protecting that brand, protecting the legacy as a result, and never have an intention of selling those businesses. So generally that model resonates with kind of bootstrapped founder-owned businesses where they care deeply about what happens after a transaction.
Yeah,
I like to say valuation is always important, but most of the founders that we work with, they care a lot about what's going to happen to the team and the customers. We've got founders who are the head of the industry association, or they vacation with their customers, or they have family members in the business, and they really do care, what's this going to mean for our employees after the business. So we've been around for 8 years now. We've done dozens and dozens of acquisitions, and excited to share more about the culture side today.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for that background. Oh, why don't we just jump on in, based on your experience, give us a high level kind of overview of where you think, these major impacts are around acquisition, the impacts on company culture. And then we can start to dig into the types of steps that businesses can take, around, strategically, approaching that, and how they can maintain the type of culture they want, both in leading up to an acquisition, the aftermath, et cetera.
Well, maybe I'll start off and then let you kind of tell the real story on the ground, Cathy. I mean, I would probably compare and contrast a typical acquisition with the approach we try to take. And it's very normal in my mind for an acquisition to create a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, a lot of disruption to a business. That is so normal and it's almost expected. I think if an employee has lived through an acquisition before, there might be good reason from their history to say, yeah, I'm worried here. If a company is being acquired by a competitor, they're often looking to cut jobs. They're looking to often assimilate the brand and the culture on day one. If it's being acquired by a traditional investment firm, there's a clock that starts ticking for that new owner to say, we've got to sell the business, typically in a few years, and let's drive the change as fast as possible to make that quick return. And that can cause a lot of damage in the wake. And our approach is a little bit different. We've got this buy and hold approach that I mentioned. So we're buying typically healthy businesses, we're holding on to them forever, and we want to help them grow further. So it's a bit unique. And the approach that we've taken is having a very decentralized operating philosophy. So we've got dozens and dozens of businesses, and they largely remain as standalone entities. So they've got their own unique brands. They've got teams like the one that Cathy runs. That minimizes disruption a lot. It retains that kind of entrepreneurial culture, empowers the leadership team. So that's what we feel is important for us. You want to try to preserve that unique identity. There's something that's working. And step one is don't mess that up. And then add on unique resources, new expertise. But we do often find that an acquisition, at least in our world, can bring new ideas, can create some new energy in the organization. So it's not all bad. It doesn't have to all be bad. But I think there is good reason for employees to typically be concerned and have some anxiety at that point in time.
Yeah, for us, when this transaction happened, 100% Vaughn, the founder of our company, and me, he relied on me as the right arm all those years, but we're looking to preserve the culture, the people, and our customers. He absolutely focused on doing what is best for customers and for the people in our company. And so, we wanted to talk to 2 or 3 references to see that what we were being told during just part of due diligence, what we were being told during the process actually happened. And so we got 3 great references. And since that time, I've been called by prospects that were thinking of being a transaction and folding into the Banyan family. And what I tell them is that 100%, we are better off today than we were before the transition. And what that looked like, was there fear in our team? We have a great team. We had one guy who said, Cathy, are you staying? And I said, I'm staying. And in fact, we talked about the transition and my new role. And he said, then we're all staying. And everybody nodded, and it was just a great rally. And I would say this, 100% of our customers have stayed, 100% of our team has stayed, and we have been freed up to do things with the business. We had ideas about what we wanted to do, but there's risk involved with growing, right? Well, when that risk is spread out with Banyan, somebody with much bigger shoulders than we had, all of a sudden those risks just look like fun challenges. And so we have really flourished for a number of reasons. And I would say one thing I think you do exceptionally well, David, is you hire great people. You have been kind of an intangible encourager and optimist side of you, but you hire like-minded people. And so when I go into, my touch base with my operating partner weekly or bi-weekly now, it's a how can I help? Hey, what are your pain points? How can we help? What can I assist? And it immediately been introduced to a network of really, uh, you know, a cohort of other CEOs, founders, but also the operating partners who have a ton of skill, experience. They've been through this. They've grown companies. They've experienced all of these pain points. There's absolutely nothing new that I've experienced that people on David's team haven't already gone through many times. But so we've acquired a fan base and a whole group of people that want to see us do well. And it's just kind of like a win-win-win situation.
Are there any things that perhaps either from your personal experience or as you've seen these acquisitions happen, outside of your personal experience, but in other spaces that you would say, as a caution or red flag that organizations should try to avoid when they're going through the acquisition process, in terms of, the kind of toxicity that can occur, or the damage that can occur, to unnecessarily disrupt a company culture?
I certainly have. We've kind of heard stories from lots of folks in our network, but I think to me it comes down to a couple core things. One is communication, right? Like, can you just be open, be honest with folks? It can be a scary time, and so people want information and they want honesty, and just tell them as much as you can and as best as you can and as clearly as you can. I'd say change is normal in any business. It's not that there's no changes that are ever going to happen. That's not reality. Every business, whether it goes through an ownership transition or not, is going to have changes. But just tell them what they can expect. And we have kind of a great process for doing that through a town hall and kind of first 100 days. And then I'd say listen to them, right? Spend that first 100 days listening. Don't ignore the concerns or worries that people bring up. For us, each of our companies has a really unique culture. So there's not one Banyan culture that all of our companies kind of assimilate into. Cathy's team has a really unique culture. We've got one company in Texas that might have, an employee base that's been working together for 25 or 30 years. And we've got one company in Auckland, New Zealand that might have more of a startup culture. And so don't take a cookie cutter approach, would be my advice. Listen, communicate, be flexible. Try to keep what people love while improving on it. And if you go in with too much of a heavy hand and too much of a quote unquote playbook, of how to do an acquisition, I think that's where people go really wrong.
Yeah, I really do think that communication piece is super key. And my guess is most people don't go in thinking they're not going to communicate. I think most people think they're communicating well, actually. But you really have to over communicate. You really have to go in and try to, whatever you think is the proper amount of communication, you probably have to like square it or cube it,
Yeah, no,
and,
100%.
and because it's just the heightened level of fear, and anxiety and stress around this period of time, and people don't like change, and all of these things, right? And so people start to fill in the gaps, they start to gossip, they start to ruminate, and so you just have to communicate and over communicate.
Yeah.
And that will really go a long way to build and maintain trust, because that's one of the things I think when a culture is built on trust, and when you're going through this acquisition process, that can quickly erode if people don't feel like you're being straight with them, if you're not being transparent with them. And it honestly doesn't even matter what your intention is. Like you may have the best of intentions, you may be trying to communicate, you may have the best intent for the best interest of your employees at heart. None of that actually matters if they don't feel it, if they don't sense it.
Yeah.
And so you have to really go overboard, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Agreed. I think too, for our team, it was really helpful for them to know they had a path for a future. At NCT, we're a little company. I don't know, maybe I think we had 15 people when we were acquired. well, that's, where's my career going to go in that? But I told everybody, take a look around because we're going to be growing. I just got to step into a new role, have a new challenge in front of me. And this is the team that we're building on. And so as we grow, you're going to see roles open up. And if those are things you want to do, we want to prepare you for them. And here's what I'm telling everybody. I don't want to lose a single soul, but if we lose you from NCT, it's got to be to another Banyan company, because if you don't see the opportunity for you here, you got to know there's an opportunity for you within the ecosystem. And our team has grown. We're developing people into those next roles and hiring generally. Well, we've hired a variety of roles, I guess, in the past few years, but we've sure seen our team benefit from the opportunities that they've had to grow to.
Yeah, and I just add on that, I think I couldn't agree more what you're saying, Cathy. How can you kind of frame the future and tell people about the great things that are to come, the positive changes that are to come? And John, I mean, we have a process for what day one looks like, what day two looks like, being able to answer those questions, having those side conversations. But I think the magic happens in the hallway conversations with their managers, during that first week, 2 weeks, a month, 2 months later, and people just say, what has changed? Do I trust this new ownership team, perhaps a new leadership team? And I'm sure that what Cathy's talking about is where the rubber meets the road in reality. Like, do people feel excited about the future?
Yeah, well, and that kind of gets to my next question, I guess. What should companies avoid post acquisition? So, we have a general idea of like what we should be doing to maintain culture, leading up to the acquisition. The acquisition takes place. After the acquisition, we're trying to hold it together. We're trying to maintain culture. I thought, David, you had a great comment earlier about, allowing these individual organizations to maintain some of what made them great and who they were, while also bringing them into the fold and so not being heavy handed, but also bringing them in and building upon what they have, right? That's important. But then, what are some of those most common missteps and what should we be avoiding that would really disrupt the culture post acquisition?
I'll start and happy for you to add on, Cathy, but I think one of the biggest things and one of the areas that we focus most on is, do people still have autonomy, right? When they think about what it looks like to show up to work every day, are they able to continue making decisions? In my mind, these are people who are closer to customers, closer to, what's actually needed in the market. And I've seen so many situations outside of Banyan where once a company is acquired, all the decisions get centralized up into the kind of mothership somewhere far away. It just erodes trust so quickly. So for us, this decentralized model, having really empowered leadership teams at each of our businesses that can make those decisions, that's what keeps culture really strong and empowered. Having a sense of empowerment is what makes work fun. I think at the end of the day, you want to be able to make decisions that matter and have work that's meaningful. So we track really closely ENPS scores, employee satisfaction scores, and we want to see employees more engaged 6 months out. So just add that, are you actually measuring this? Do you have some way to say what is happening in the business? What's the pulse of employee culture? Because if not, you're just going on anecdotes and you're looking at lagging indicators like, are people leaving the organization?
Really, for us, I think the team, the employees, haven't seen material changes. There's they're a little bit insulated from it in that they're not meeting with Banyan every day. I'm meeting with Banyan on a bi-weekly basis and things like that. What they have seen change, they think is really beneficial. Things that I couldn't do on my own. I'm a better leader because of what I've learned from my mentor. So we have better things happening in the company, things that, either A, we had thought of before and weren't able to execute on, or B, new things that were brought in as ideas that we've been able to execute on. Things that Banyan has done for my team, we've had leadership seminars, and that just lets it's just staff development, right? People want to be growing. Your A players for sure want to be growing and learning and knowing that their skills are staying relevant. They have cohorts. So our customer success team, our sales team, our technical teams, our support leads, they all get to meet with their Banyan peers and learn from each other and from industry experts. So for us, I really haven't spent time focusing on what to avoid. I've just taken that, what can we do, and tried to do it on steroids kind of a deal. There's just so many good opportunities. It's hard to let any one of those good things pass us by, you know.
Well, I think that's the ideal, right? So you've seen this acquisition as a real opportunity to build upon the strengths that you had, to really open up new opportunities. I've heard the word empower several times in this conversation. That's what we all want. We all want some autonomy, and we all want to be empowered to do our best work. We all want to be excited about showing up to work and to do cool stuff. And nobody wants to be micromanaged. Nobody wants, to have some sort of centralized control over what they're doing, and whether we're talking about an acquisition or anything, nobody wants that. So,
Yeah.
what I'm hearing, it sounds like almost the ideal that anyone would hope for, whether we're talking about an acquisition or even just a restructure in any organization. So I think these are some really great lessons. Last question before we start to wrap up. What would you say, like, how does Banyan provide, a really great permanent home for successful enterprise software companies, their employers or their employees, their customers, anyone listening who might be even considering that as like an option, like a future home? Like, how would you respond to that?
I'm happy to take this one. I think we blend a few things in a unique way. And so one is this idea of being a permanent home. I think we aren't going to resell our businesses down the road, and we're here to preserve that unique legacy, the cultures that have really been important up until that point of a transition. Then how do you add on resources and support on top of that? I think two would be the just huge focus on talent that we have. It's in our, we're talking about software businesses in our industry. It's the lifeblood of a software company. So how can you ensure that teams are empowered, to use that word again, John, to continue leading the business, to have that stability for employees, for customers? Again, the idea of having really strong employee satisfaction scores across the board is a testament in my mind to that model. We want to build rewarding, empowering workplaces. And a lot of that comes through that sense of autonomy. And then the third piece I'd touch on is just combining this idea of the permanent home, the focus on talent, with best practices and operating support. So as Cathy was saying, can you get expert level support on the issues a company is going through, whether that's growing a sales and marketing team, getting finance or HR support that maybe a company didn't have before in a certain way, revamping a product roadmap, or hiring is a huge piece that we help our companies on, especially around technical talent. So these are massive needle movers. I mean, for a company Cathy's size, or for some of ours that are even larger, how can we add that kind of best practice, that operating support on top of what's working so far?
Well, thank you both so much. I note the time. The time has flown by. I need to probably let you both go and get on with your busy days. But before we wrap things up, I just wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can get connected with you, find out more about your work, your teams, and then give us the final word on the topic for today.
I would say if you are considering a transaction, M&A or sale acquisition for your company, and you want to talk to somebody who's been through it, feel free to reach out to me. You can find me on LinkedIn, Cathy Wassenaar, CEO of NCT CaseWorks, or you could find me through the Banyan software website too, I'm sure. Just ask somebody there for my information and they'll share it out with you. Happy to walk through what our experience has been.
Awesome. Thank you, Cathy.
And,
David.
Yeah, pleasure. It's been great being on the show today. And likewise, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, David Berkal. CEO of Banyan Software, or learn more at banyansoftware.com. I'd say, just as a final thought here, I mean, these are really important moments, sometimes the most important moments in people's professional lives. And we take it really, really seriously. And it's an emotional moment when you find out that your business has changed ownership. And often for reasons, it does scare people, and it does bring up fear and anxiety. And fortunately, we've developed a way to do that really well, we think, and to move the company forward in a really great way that protects that culture. But hopefully we've been able to share some of the ways that we've been able to do that, whether people are thinking about transaction or not. You know, these are just critical moments, and we'd love to be able to share what we've learned with the wider world.
Wonderful. Cathy, David, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. I encourage the audience to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Cathy and David's teams can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the podcast. We hope you stay healthy and safe, and please join us again soon.